Here is the complete voiceover script, written in omniscient third person, adhering to all specified formatting and length requirements. The morning light over Norfolk Naval Base carried a certain stillness, an echo of discipline and memory that lingered long after the revel had faded. The metallic scent of salt water drifted in from the docks, mixing with the faint tang of disinfectant and floor wax inside the training hall. It was the kind of morning that went unnoticed by most. But to Daniel Cross, it was sacred. He guided the mop in long, patient strokes, his movement steady and quiet. The gray-green of his worn fatigues blended with the floor tiles. To an onlooker, he was just another janitor starting another shift. But the precision in his rhythm, each motion deliberate, measured, hinted at someone who once moved with purpose, far beyond a mop and bucket. His 6-year-old daughter, Ava, sat cross-legged by a bench, her faded teddy bear propped upright like a proud soldier. She beamed at her father as if she had just commanded a battalion. Daniel smiled. "Good work, Captain Ava. Make sure he keeps his posture straight." The little girl saluted with all the seriousness her small frame could muster. Around them, the cavernous training room waited for the day's drills, rows of mats, punching bags, and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. At that hour, the place belonged to them alone. For Daniel, those few minutes before the first recruits arrived were the calmest part of the day before laughter, shouts, and memories began to blur. He wrung out the mop, his mind slipping, as it often did, to the sea. The helicopter's spinning blades, the weight of the harness, the voice on the radio crying for help. Then the explosion, then nothing. He blinked, drew a breath, and grounded himself again in the soft squeak of the mop. "Morning, Cross." The voice came sharp, authoritative, and unmistakably female. Daniel looked up. Admiral Amelia Drake stepped into the room, her white uniform immaculate, the light catching on the medals lined neatly on her chest. Her posture was the embodiment of order, every thread, every crease deliberate. Behind her followed a few officers, all carrying that mix of pride and mild tension that accompanied her presence. "Good morning, Admiral," Daniel said quietly, setting his mop aside. She gave a brief nod. "You are early, as usual." "Habit," he replied, offering a faint, polite smile. Ava peeked from behind the bucket, clutching her teddy bear. Amelia noticed her and softened slightly. "And who might this officer be?" Ava's voice came shy but firm. "Ava Cross, ma'am." "Pleasure to meet you, Ava," Amelia said, kneeling a little to her height. "Your dad has been keeping this place spotless." Ava's grin widened. "He says clean floors help people stand taller." Amelia chuckled, a rare sound from someone the younger sailors jokingly referred to as the Ice Admiral. "That sounds like something a good leader would say." As she stood, her gaze lingered on Daniel for a moment longer than expected. There was something about the way he stood, shoulders relaxed but ready, eyes calm yet aware of every movement in the room, that tugged faintly at her memory. For an instant, she saw not a janitor, but a silhouette framed against the storm, a voice that once spoke through static, then it was gone. "Carry on, Mr. Cross," she said, breaking the thought. "Yes, ma'am." She moved on, instructing the officers who followed her. Daniel returned to his mop, though his eyes trailed her for a moment. He had seen admirals before, dozens of them. But Amelia Drake carried something different, a weight beneath the composure, a quiet grief she did not let the world see. He knew that kind of grief well. By mid-morning, the room was alive with motion. Soldiers' training boots thudding against mats, bursts of laughter between sparring sessions. Daniel kept to the side, cleaning up, checking supplies, making himself invisible. Yet invisibility had its advantages. You saw what others did not. He noticed how Amelia moved through her team, not just commanding, but observing, correcting with precision and rare empathy. Beneath the iron discipline, she cared deeply, though she would never admit it aloud. When the laughter rose too high, Ava covered her ears and giggled. Daniel crouched beside her. "It is just noise, sweetheart. They are practicing being strong, like you." He paused, caught off guard, maybe once. She studied him for a moment, then nodded as if confirming a secret. "You are still strong." That small, unshakable faith in her father made something tighten in his chest. He brushed a hand through her hair and smiled. Across the room, Amelia turned just in time to see the exchange. The way Daniel's eyes softened, the kind of tenderness rare on a military base, and once again that faint flicker of recognition stirred in her chest, though she could not place it. As she passed near him later, she paused, gesturing at the gleaming floor. "You have done good work here, Cross. Thank you, Admiral." Then, with the faintest hint of humor, something unusual in her tone, she added, "Do not make it too clean. My recruits might start slipping." He allowed himself a quiet laugh. "I will keep that in mind." For the first time that day, she smiled. Not the polite, controlled curve she wore for public appearances, but a genuine, fleeting smile. As she turned to leave, Daniel caught her looking at him once more, this time with a trace of curiosity in her eyes. When the room finally emptied, he leaned on his mop, watching sunlight stretch across the tiles. Ava had fallen asleep on the bench, her teddy bear still in her arms. He whispered to himself, "Easy day, kiddo." But deep down, he knew peace on a base like this never lasted long. Somewhere beyond the hum of drills and the ocean wind, fate was already stirring quietly, setting the stage for the moment when the janitor would be called out, not to clean, but to stand. The kind of moment that changes everything. 680 words. By the next morning, the training hall pulsed with energy. The faint smell of sweat, leather, and disinfectant mixed into that unmistakable military perfume, a scent of discipline and human will. The early drills had ended, but laughter lingered. A handful of young sailors stayed behind, testing their strength on the mats, teasing one another with playful jabs and mock bravado. Admiral Amelia Drake stood at the edge of the floor, her white uniform replaced by a crisp training gi, a black belt tied neatly around her waist. Her posture was impeccable. Chin high, shoulders squared, the presence of command intact, even when her shoes were off. "All right, boys," she said with a dry smile. "Who is next?" The sailors exchanged hesitant glances. None dared to step forward. Everyone on base knew Amelia Drake's reputation. Behind the medals and the composure lay years of combat training, martial arts, survival tactics, rescue operations. Sparring with her was not an invitation, it was a dare. "Come on," she teased. "Surely one of you wants the honor of losing gracefully." The room broke into laughter. Someone muttered, "Not me, ma'am. I have still got ribs that remember last time." Amelia grinned, letting the laughter swell before turning her gaze toward the far side of the room, toward the quiet man mopping near the corner. Daniel Cross, dressed in his olive fatigues and faded apron, moved methodically as always. He was wiping down the mats after the last round, careful to keep Ava, who sat cross-legged nearby, out of the way. "Hey, janitor," Amelia called out, her tone light but unmistakably commanding. "Is that floor clean enough, or do you need a test run to see if it is slip-proof?" The room erupted again. Laughter echoed. Boots shuffled, and a few sailors nudged each other. Daniel stopped mid-wipe. Slowly, he looked up, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Ma'am, I would not want to interfere with training." Her eyes sparkled with challenge. "I am offering you a chance to show off your mop skills in hand-to-hand form. For fun," he repeated as if testing the words. "Yes," she said, "for fun." Ava tilted her head, clutching her teddy bear tighter. She did not like the laughter. "Daddy," she whispered. Daniel crouched beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "It is all right, sweetheart. The Admiral is just joking." But as he rose, the sound of the sailors' laughter changed. Less friendly, now edging toward mockery. Someone whispered too loudly, "Guess the janitor is afraid to wrinkle his apron." That did it. The laughter that followed filled the room, bouncing off the walls like ricochets. Amelia's expression stiffened. She had not meant to humiliate him. It was supposed to be light-hearted, a spontaneous moment of levity among her crew. But she realized too late how it looked, a superior officer calling out a civilian worker in front of an audience. Daniel met her gaze. There was no resentment there, just calm, quiet dignity. He set the mop against the wall and rolled his sleeves up. "If it is for fun, Admiral," he said evenly, "then let us make sure no one gets hurt." The laughter stopped. A ripple of surprise went through the room. Even Amelia's composure faltered for half a second before she caught herself. "Very well," she said, hiding her curiosity behind a thin smile. "We will keep it light." She stepped onto the mat. The others backed away, forming a loose circle. Ava watched from the bench, small fingers twisting around her bear's paw. Daniel stood across from Amelia, hands relaxed at his sides. There was nothing in his stance that spoke of challenge, no posturing, no bravado, just stillness. "Ever trained before?" she asked, half teasing. "A little," he said. What style? He paused, then replied softly, the kind that tries not to leave scars. Something in the way he said it made the air shift. The sailors exchanged puzzled looks. Amelia frowned slightly, then nodded. "All right, Janitor," she said. "Show me what you have got." She moved first, a sharp step forward. A quick jab meant to test his reflexes. He sidestepped neatly, not countering, not even flinching, just watching. Her second strike came faster. Again, he slipped aside as if he had known it was coming. The room grew quieter. The laughter had drained away, replaced by a growing curiosity. Amelia adjusted her stance. "You are quick," she said. Daniel smiled faintly. "You are holding back." For a moment, she saw it, the calm confidence in his eyes. Not arrogance, not defiance. Something deeper, familiar. She exhaled slowly. "Let us see how you handle this." Her next sequence came fast. A roundhouse kick followed by a sweep, then a pivoting arm strike. Each one executed with the fluid precision of a master. Each one missed by an inch. Daniel did not block, did not strike back. He simply was not there when the blows arrived. The sailors stood frozen. Finally, she stopped, breathing lightly, hands still raised. "You are not even trying," she said. Daniel looked at her quietly. "You asked for fun, not a fight." A murmur rippled through the room. Ava, still watching from the corner, clapped once softly, proudly. "That is my daddy." Amelia blinked, her composure cracking for a heartbeat. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed, a real laugh, bright and full. "All right, Cross," she said, shaking her head. "You win this round." He nodded once and reached for his mop again, as if nothing had happened. The sailors, unsure what to say, stepped aside as he passed. Amelia stood alone on the mat for a moment, staring after him. There was something about his movements, graceful, measured, controlled, that nagged at her memory. A soldier, not just that, a pilot maybe. She could not quite place it, but a thought flickered in the back of her mind. Where have I seen that kind of calm before? As Daniel knelt to gather his bucket, Ava hugged him tightly. "You did good, Daddy," he smiled. The Admiral was just having fun. "She likes you," Ava said with innocent certainty. Daniel chuckled softly. "That is not how it works, sweetheart." But as he looked back across the room where Amelia Drake was still standing, arms crossed, expression thoughtful, he was not entirely sure she had been joking. Outside, the afternoon sun burned gold over the base. Inside, something small but significant had shifted. For the first time, the Admiral's laughter had turned to silence. And silence, Daniel knew, always came before the storm. 1,200 words. Night had settled over Norfolk, heavy and windless. The ocean beyond the base murmured like an old memory, steady and low, as if whispering names to the dark. Inside the training facility, the fluorescent lights had been dimmed, leaving behind only a faint hum and the echo of the day's laughter fading into silence. Amelia Drake lingered at her desk long after most of her officers had gone. Her office window overlooked the harbor, rows of ships glinting beneath the moonlight, proud and silent sentinels. She should have been reviewing tomorrow's logistics or reports from the Atlantic Fleet inspection. Instead, her eyes kept drifting to the black and white photograph pinned to her wall. A rescue helicopter caught mid-hover, the waves below erupting in foam and fire. It was dated 12 years ago. Operation Huron Storm. Her throat tightened at the memory. The heat, the chaos, the screaming wind, and the smoke thick enough to taste. She had been a junior officer then, trapped in the belly of a transport chopper going down off the Carolina coast. The explosion had torn through the fuselage. Flames, panic. She remembered shouting coordinates through the radio, her voice laced with fear. Then another voice cutting through the static. Calm, steady, unmistakably American. "Hold on, Bluebird 2. We see you. I am coming in." No name, just a call sign she had never forgotten. The pilot who flew into that storm had saved 6 of them, then vanished from the Navy records entirely. Some said he had been injured beyond recovery. Others claimed he had broken protocol. The truth was lost to bureaucracy and silence. Amelia leaned back, exhaling slowly. The way Daniel Cross had moved earlier that day, the control, the grace under pressure, had stirred something deep, something she had not felt in years. "Do not be ridiculous," she told herself. A janitor cannot be him. And yet, when she had looked into his eyes, she had seen it, the same calm certainty she had once heard through a headset above the roar of dying engines. She rubbed her temple, frustrated. The Navy trained you to trust facts, not feelings. But sometimes ghosts refuse to stay buried. Across the base, in a small maintenance shed, tucked behind the gym, Daniel sat alone with a thermos of lukewarm coffee. Ava had long since fallen asleep in the little cot behind him, clutching her teddy bear. The faint glow of the desk lamp haloed her small face, peaceful, untouched by the noise of the world. Daniel stared at the mop, leaning against the wall, then down at his hands, scarred, steady, the hands of a man who had once flown through hell and back. He had not meant to draw attention today. He never did. For years, he had worked to erase the soldier he used to be. The Navy Cross he had been awarded sat in a shoebox somewhere, buried under old letters and photographs. He did not clean floors because he had to. He cleaned because it gave him peace, order, and something quiet enough to drown out the past. But when Admiral Drake had called him out, when those recruits had laughed, it had stirred something he thought he had buried. Instinct, pride, muscle memory, older than pain. He closed his eyes and let the images come. The fireball, the mayday, the terrified voices on the radio, the rescue harness slamming against his shoulder, the helicopter spinning, the bright flash, and the silence afterward. He still remembered her voice, the young officer in the doomed chopper. She had been the last one he pulled from the wreck, and the last voice he heard before the cockpit went black. Her words had been barely a whisper through the static. "Whoever you are, thank you." When he woke up in the hospital weeks later, she was gone. The reports listed her among the survivors. That was enough for him. He had left the Navy soon after, unable to fly again. His back never fully healed, his soul even less so. The medals, the commendations, none of it mattered. What haunted him was not the crash. It was the friend he could not save that night, co-pilot Jason Reed, who had burned trying to buy them time. "I still owe you, brother," Daniel thought. "And maybe this quiet life is how I pay it back." But the universe, it seemed, was not done testing him. The next day dawned gray and windy. Daniel arrived early again, setting up his tools, while Ava colored at the corner table with crayons someone from the mess hall had given her. He worked in silence, his mind still replaying the Admiral's laughter, the way it had faltered when she saw him move. He did not want to be noticed. Attention was dangerous. Attention meant questions. But fate had a way of circling back. The door opened sharply. Amelia Drake entered, crisp and composed, flanked by two officers. Her presence filled the space like the sound of a starting bell. "Morning, Mr. Cross," she said. He nodded politely. "Morning, Admiral." She hesitated. "I hope I did not embarrass you yesterday." He looked up, surprised by the sincerity in her tone. "Not at all, ma'am. You gave my daughter quite the story to tell." Ava beamed. Daddy was like, "Whoa." And everyone was like, "Whoa." The sailors behind her chuckled. Even Amelia smiled, though faintly. Seems she remembers it better than we do. As they spoke, a training alarm sounded in the distance. One of those periodic drills meant to keep the unit sharp. The sound triggered something deep in Daniel's chest. The whine of engines, the call of mayday, the echo of fear. His breath caught, but he hid it behind a calm exterior. Amelia noticed the flicker in his eyes. Instinct told her she had seen that expression before, somewhere between composure and memory, the look of someone who had stared at death and learned not to blink. When she left the hall, she could not shake the thought. That night, she searched her personal archive, a classified database of service records accessible only to flag officers. The glow of the computer lit the dark room. She typed Daniel Cross. The results were sparse at first. Civilian contractor, base maintenance staff, Norfolk, employed for years. Then she scrolled further. Hidden behind an encrypted file tag was a single line of text marked restricted. Former service. Her fingers hovered. She entered her clearance code. A moment later, the screen shifted. The file read, Lieutenant Commander Daniel Cross, call sign, Huron Hawk, decorations, Navy Cross, Distinguished Flying Cross, Humanitarian Service Medal, status, honorably discharged. Medical mission record, Operation Huron Storm, classified. Amelia froze. Her breath hitched. The air in the room seemed to vanish. Huron Storm. The same operation, the same storm. She leaned back in her chair, eyes wide, heart pounding. Her hands trembled as she whispered to the empty room. It is him. The janitor, the man with the quiet eyes, the one who saved her life. Outside her window, the waves beat against the dock pylons, steady as a heartbeat. In the maintenance shed across the base, Daniel stirred in his sleep, haunted by the same sound. Two souls, once bound by a storm, now walking the same corridors without knowing what awaited them. And somewhere deep in the silence of the base, destiny began to stir again softly, like the first rumble before thunder. 1,900 words. The morning after her discovery, Admiral Amelia Drake moved through the base with her usual precision, but her mind was far from still. Every salute, every report, every clipboard handed to her blurred into background noise. Beneath her calm exterior, she was trying to reconcile two impossible truths. The man who mopped the gym floors was the same man who had once flown into a wall of fire to save her life. She had read every line of his classified file twice. The commendations, the citations, the medical discharge report, the words spinal compression, unfit for further flight, had hit her like a blow. But what struck her even more was the silence that followed. No further service, no reintegration, no reassignment. The hero of Huron's storm had vanished into civilian life without ceremony or farewell. Now he worked down the hall from her office, cleaning floors, raising a little girl alone. She wanted to speak to him, to thank him properly, to ask why. But part of her, the disciplined, career-bound officer, hesitated. What would she even say? That she had only realized after 12 years that the man who risked his life for hers was mopping her corridor, that she had laughed at him in front of her own sailors? Duty demanded she remain composed. Emotion had no place in command. Yet, as she walked past the training hall, her steps slowed involuntarily. Daniel was there as always, polishing the mat edges while Ava arranged a row of tiny plastic soldiers along the windowsill. The morning light caught the faint lines on his face, the quiet strength in his posture. He did not see her at first. When he finally looked up, their eyes met. "Morning, Admiral," he said, his voice calm, respectful. "Good morning," she replied, masking the nervous flutter in her chest. "Looks like the place is already spotless." "Almost," he said. "Dust has a way of coming back, like old memories." Her heart skipped a beat. Old memories. The phrase hit too close. She forced a small smile. "We will try not to make your job harder." He shrugged lightly. "I do not mind a little work. Keeps my mind clear." Before she could answer, Lieutenant Carter, her energetic young aide, jogged into the hall, holding a set of training gloves. "Ma'am, your sparring team is ready for warm-up." Amelia blinked. "Already? I thought we were." "Yes, ma'am. The schedule has been adjusted for the Admiral's motivation session," Carter said with a grin. "The team is itching to test their reflexes after yesterday's entertainment." Ava giggled softly, clutching her bear. Daniel looked at Amelia, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Sounds like you have started a trend." Amelia rolled her eyes, a rare human gesture. "Apparently, so I may have created a monster." As Carter helped her secure her gloves, she turned to the sailors, forming a loose circle on the mat. "All right, people, let us keep it light today. We are practicing defense, not destruction." That earned a few nervous laughs. Daniel began collecting cleaning supplies, intending to step aside, but one of the younger sailors, a broad-shouldered corporal named Ellis, called out, "Hey, Admiral, how about a rematch with your janitor? He gave us quite a show yesterday." A chorus of agreement followed. Even Carter grinned. "Come on, ma'am. It would make for good morale." Amelia hesitated. Her instinct was to shut it down. But when she saw the faint smile on Daniel's face, amused, almost teasing, something shifted inside her. "All right," she said. Finally, her tone firm but playful. "If Mr. Cross does not mind." Daniel set down his bucket and stepped forward. "If it is for morale, I would hate to disappoint." The sailors cheered. Ava clapped happily. As they faced each other again on the mat, the energy in the room changed. It was not the awkward humor of yesterday. This time, there was something unspoken between them. Awareness, respect, curiosity. Amelia adjusted her stance. "We will keep it short," she said. Daniel nodded. "Short is good." The first move came from her. Quick, precise, a faint jab, followed by a side kick. He parried effortlessly, his movement smooth as water. The sailors watched in silence, their excitement dampened by the strange grace unfolding before them. Amelia circled, sweat forming lightly along her brow. "You are not an amateur," she said between breaths. He smiled faintly, "and you are not easy to read." She attacked again, faster, sharper. He countered, but this time he let his forearm brush lightly against hers, guiding her momentum aside. The contact was brief, but it jolted her. His reflexes, his composure, unmistakable. Something inside her confirmed what the file had already told her. This was no janitor. This was the same man who had flown through hell. She took a breath, stepped back, and tried one last strike. A sweep meant to test his balance. He anticipated it perfectly, sidestepped, and instead of countering, he rested 2 fingers gently against her wrist, a gesture more teaching than taunting. "Admiral," he said softly, "sometimes defense is not about blocking, it is about knowing when to stop." Silence filled the room. For a moment, neither moved. The soldiers stood frozen, unsure whether they had just witnessed victory or surrender. Amelia looked up at him, breath shallow, and something like humility passed through her eyes. She lowered her stance slowly, then bowed. Lesson received. Daniel nodded, stepping back. "Thank you, ma'am." Ava's small voice broke the silence. "You are both really good." Laughter rippled through the hall, easing the tension. Carter clapped his hands. "Well, that is one for the history books. The Admiral and the Janitor. Best sparring match this base has seen." As everyone began dispersing, Amelia stood still, watching Daniel pack up his things. There was a serenity to him, the kind of peace only earned through surviving chaos. She felt something stir inside her, half admiration, half guilt. When he walked past her, she said quietly, "You moved like someone who has done this before." He met her gaze evenly, maybe in another life. Then he was gone, leaving her alone on the mat. Later that night, as Amelia reviewed the day's reports, her reflection stared back at her from the window, uniform, perfect medals, gleaming, eyes tired. She thought about the man in the maintenance shed, and the little girl who colored by his side, the way he had said another life. What haunted her most was not the mystery of who he was. It was the quiet grace of how he had accepted who he had become. And though she did not know it yet, that quiet grace would soon test every belief she had about honor, healing, and the true meaning of strength. Outside, the wind began to rise, faint at first, but steady, as if somewhere out at sea, a storm was waking again. The following morning arrived gray and still, the kind of overcast quiet that seemed to press against the windows and dull every sound. On the Norfolk base, routine ruled all things, reveille at dawn, drills by 7, reports by 9. But something felt different that day. Even the chatter in the mess hall seemed cautious, subdued, as though the entire base was holding its breath. It started with whispers, the kind that ripple across barracks and hallways, passed in low voices over coffee, and laughter that never quite reached the eyes. The janitor took on the Admiral. She could not land a single hit. He moved like he had done this before. By the time Amelia Drake walked across the parade ground, she could feel it. The eyes that lingered too long, the half-suppressed grins. No one dared to say anything to her face. Of course, she was still the Admiral, but soldiers have a way of talking without words. She did not blame them. Yesterday's spar had been unexpected. What was supposed to be a harmless morale exercise had turned into something else entirely, a quiet revelation she had not meant to have. Amelia had seen hundreds of fighters in her career. Some were fast, some were strong. But what she had witnessed in Daniel Cross was not power, it was control. The kind of control born from discipline so deep it rewires the soul. He had moved with the patience of a man who knew every possible mistake and refused to make any, and he had not struck her once. Now, sitting in her office with a mug of black coffee gone cold, she replayed that moment, his 2 fingers resting lightly on her wrist, his calm voice. Sometimes defense is not about blocking, it is about knowing when to stop. That line had not come from a janitor. It came from a man who had seen too much, who had learned restraint the hard way. A knock at the door pulled her from thought. "Enter." Lieutenant Carter stepped in, a hesitant smile on his face. "Morning, Admiral. I brought the updated readiness reports and, the gossip." Amelia arched an eyebrow. "The gossip?" "Yes, ma'am. The crew is convinced Mr. Cross was some kind of Black Ops instructor or retired SEAL. One guy swears he saw him handle a mop like a sword. Amelia's lips twitched. That sounds like a security hazard. Carter grinned, then sobered. Ma'am, permission to speak freely. She nodded. I think they respect him, Carter said quietly. They joke, sure, but after what they saw, it is not mockery. It is admiration, the kind we do not see much anymore. Amelia leaned back, thoughtful. Respect does not always wear rank, Lieutenant. Sometimes it just shows up with a bucket and a steady hand. Carter chuckled, saluted, and left. When the door closed, Amelia stared at the Navy Cross medal displayed on her shelf. The irony was not lost on her. The real bearer of such courage was probably sweeping the hallway outside her office. Meanwhile, Daniel worked in silence. The day after the Spar, his routine had returned. Mop, polish, repair, repeat. But the air around him had changed. Soldiers who once barely noticed him now greeted him with cautious respect. A few even offered to carry his supplies. He thanked them politely, but kept his head down. The last thing he wanted was attention. Ava noticed the difference, of course. Daddy, she said as they walked down the corridor, her small hand gripping his, everyone is smiling at you today. Maybe they are just happy it is Friday, he replied. She shook her head. No, it is because they know you are strong. He smiled faintly. Strong does not always mean fighting, kiddo. Then what does it mean? He thought for a moment. It means staying kind, even when it is hard. That seemed to satisfy her. She skipped ahead, humming a tune she had made up about heroes and teddy bears. As Daniel watched her, something tightened in his chest, a mix of pride and ache. He had promised himself never to be drawn back into the world he had left. He was done proving himself, done with medals and missions. The janitor's life was not glamorous, but it was safe for him, for her. Still, he could not shake the feeling that peace was never meant to last. 2,900 words. That afternoon, Amelia's unit gathered again for a routine close-quarters combat demonstration. She had not intended for Daniel to be there, but fate, or the base's relentless schedule, had other plans. He was cleaning near the corner of the room when one of the instructors asked for a volunteer. Admiral, the instructor said, would you care to demonstrate the defensive stance from yesterday's lesson? The room chuckled softly. Amelia sighed. You all never let anything go, do you? Then her eyes found Daniel. He was leaning lightly against the wall, mop in hand, watching without expression. Their gazes met. Mr. Cross, she said before she could stop herself. Care to assist? The sailors froze. Daniel hesitated, then nodded slowly. If you insist, Admiral. The instructor stepped aside as Daniel joined her on the mat. There was no laughter this time, just quiet anticipation. Let us start simple, Amelia said, raising her hands. Daniel mirrored her stance, though his movements were relaxed, almost reluctant. She attacked, a short elbow strike. He sidestepped effortlessly. A palm strike, another dodge. Every move she made, he read like a book, countering with minimal effort. Do not hold back, Admiral, someone murmured. Amelia's jaw tightened. She launched a faster sequence. 3 strikes, 1 kick. Daniel deflected each with almost lazy precision. When she tried to sweep, he caught her wrist mid-motion, holding it gently but firmly. For a heartbeat, the world went still. Then his voice, low and steady. The hardest part of discipline is restraint. She looked up into his eyes, seeing not arrogance, but compassion. He released her wrist and stepped back. Silence filled the room. Then from the back, one of the younger sailors began to clap. Another joined. Soon the hall echoed with applause, not for victory, but for understanding. Amelia stood there, chest rising and falling, her mind spinning. She had just been reminded of something she had almost forgotten. That strength was not always loud. Sometimes it stood quietly in a janitor's shoes and refused to strike. When the training ended, she found him outside, wiping down the railing in the corridor. You did not have to go easy on me, she said softly. Daniel smiled without looking up. I was not going easy. You were holding back, too. Maybe I was. They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the bass filling the space between them. Finally, she said, You have a strange way of teaching, Mr. Cross. He glanced at her, eyes warm but distant. I used to believe fighting proved strength. Then I learned that sometimes walking away takes more. Her breath caught at the quiet wisdom in his tone. Before she could answer, Ava ran up, tugging at Daniel's sleeve. "Daddy, I drew you and the Admiral." She held up a crayon picture, two stick figures bowing to each other under a big yellow sundae. Amelia smiled. "That is beautiful, Ava." Daniel looked at the drawing for a long moment, something unreadable passing over his face. "Yeah," he murmured. "It really is." As the child skipped ahead, Amelia found herself watching him again. Not as a janitor, not even as the man who once saved her life, but as someone who embodied the very thing she had spent her career preaching, yet rarely practiced: grace under fire. And though neither of them said it, they both knew this peace between them was fragile, too still, too quiet, the kind of silence that always comes before a storm. The rain began before dawn, soft at first, just a whisper against the hangar roofs, then steady, relentless, a curtain of gray that blurred the entire base into watercolor. The Norfolk air smelled of salt and metal and memory. Most of the base still slept, but one light burned alone in the administrative wing, Admiral Amelia Drake's office. She had not gone home. Not after what she had seen, not after what she had read. The classified record still glowed on her monitor. The Navy Cross emblem etched at the top. Lieutenant Commander Daniel Cross, hero of Operation Huron Storm. The man whose voice had once guided her through fire. The man who was supposed to have disappeared. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, replaying his words from yesterday. The hardest part of discipline is restraint. Now it all made sense. The poise, the calm, the haunted stillness in his eyes, the way he had known exactly when to stop. But what haunted her most was not the discovery. It was the realization that she had humiliated him twice. Amelia exhaled and leaned back, staring at the rain streaking down the window. It was absurd, an admiral losing sleep over a janitor. But Daniel Cross was not a janitor. He was a legend the Navy had quietly forgotten. And now, by some cruel twist of fate, he scrubbed her floors while she signed memos under his forgotten medal. A pang of guilt twisted in her chest. How many others had she walked past in her career, not seeing the stories behind their eyes? How many quiet heroes lived among the ranks, unseen, unacknowledged? Her reflection in the glass looked back at her, cold, composed, lonely. She whispered to the rain, "You saved my life, and I did not even recognize you." Down the corridor, Daniel arrived early as usual, the rhythmic squeak of his boots marking his quiet procession through the hallways. Ava skipped beside him in her red raincoat, humming a tune, her teddy bear tucked beneath one arm. "Careful on the steps, sweetheart," he said gently. "Yes, Daddy." She hopped over a puddle with exaggerated precision, then looked up at him, her face glowing. "Are we still getting pancakes at the diner later?" He smiled. "If we finish early, maybe. Yay." He envied her simplicity, the way she lived entirely in the present. The past did not haunt her, the future did not scare her. Every day was just another adventure. As they entered the maintenance wing, a familiar voice echoed from behind. "Mr. Cross," Daniel turned. Admiral Drake stood at the end of the hallway, umbrella in one hand, her expression unreadable. He straightened instinctively. "Morning, Admiral. I would like a word, if you have a moment." Ava looked up. "Are you in trouble, Daddy?" Amelia's features softened. "Not at all, Ava. I just need to borrow him for a little while." Ava nodded solemnly. "Okay, but he gets nervous when people yell." Daniel stifled a chuckle. "I will be fine, kiddo. Go color by the front desk for a bit." Once Ava was out of earshot, Amelia gestured toward her office. "This way, please." Inside, the air was still, except for the patter of rain on the windows. Daniel removed his cap, waiting quietly. Amelia stood behind her desk, then finally looked up at him, not as a superior officer, but as a woman carrying the weight of 12 lost years. "I found your file," she said softly. Daniel froze. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the fluorescent light above them. She continued, her voice low but steady. "Lieutenant Commander Daniel Cross, Navy Cross recipient, rescue pilot, Huron Storm, 2010. She drew a trembling breath. "You saved my unit that night. You saved me." He closed his eyes. "That was a long time ago, but not long enough for me to forget the voice that told me to hold on." Silence hung between them like fog. Finally, he spoke. I did not think anyone from that night was still around. I was, she said, her voice breaking. And I should have remembered you. I should have looked for you. You had a career to build, he replied gently, and I had a promise to keep. Her brow furrowed. A promise? He hesitated, eyes drifting toward the rain-slicked window. To my co-pilot. He did not make it out. I told him I would make sure no one else went down on my watch. After I healed, I thought maybe keeping this base clean was my way of keeping that promise. The simplicity of it, the humility, made her chest ache. She stepped closer. Daniel, why did you never come back? The Navy would have found a place for you. He gave a quiet laugh. A place, maybe, but not peace. I had had enough noise for one lifetime. She nodded slowly, understanding more than she wanted to admit. You were the calm in the storm that night. I remember thinking whoever that pilot was, he did not sound human, just steady, like he had already made peace with whatever came next. I had not, he said, but I had something to fight for. You all did. Their eyes met. Then two soldiers from the same storm finally standing face to face. Amelia swallowed hard. I owe you more than I can ever repay. You do not owe me anything, Admiral. You made it out. That is payment enough. She shook her head. No, that is not enough. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of rain grew heavier, drumming against the glass like a heartbeat. Finally, she said, there is a ceremony next week for distinguished service. I could. No, he interrupted gently. Please, no speeches, no spotlight. I am where I belong. Her throat tightened. You belong in uniform. He smiled faintly. Uniforms do not make heroes, Admiral. Those words landed like a quiet thunderclap. Amelia blinked back tears she had not expected to fall. She turned away, composing herself, then said softly, At least allow me to thank you properly. A cup of coffee, perhaps? He considered it. Only if I can bring my daughter. She is the real commanding officer in our house. Amelia laughed through her tears, the sound light and fragile. Then it settled. When Daniel left her office, the rain had eased. He found Ava asleep on a chair, her coloring book open across her lap. He lifted her gently into his arms, kissed her forehead, and walked into the quiet morning. Amelia stood by her window, watching him go. The janitor's gait was steady, unhurried. Yet to her, it carried the weight of everything she had ever admired about the Navy. Courage, grace, purpose without pride. For years, she had told her officers that honor was earned in battle. Now she knew better. Sometimes honor simply meant showing up every day and doing good quietly. She whispered into the empty room, Thank you, Daniel Cross. Outside, the storm began to clear. The first rays of light broke through the clouds, streaking the wet pavement with gold, like the first sign of redemption finding its way home. 4,100 words. The rain had passed, leaving behind a morning that smelled of salt and sunlight. A thin mist rolled across the Norfolk harbor as gulls wheeled lazily above the cranes. The base stirred awake, boots on gravel, laughter over breakfast, the metallic clatter of day-to-day service. Daniel Cross was already at work, pushing his mop down the corridor near the hangar bay. He moved with his usual quiet rhythm, but his mind was not entirely on the floor. His conversation with Admiral Amelia Drake the day before still echoed in his thoughts. He had not expected her to find out. He certainly had not expected her to care. 12 years of silence had built walls he never thought anyone would try to climb again. But the look in her eyes, equal parts regret and recognition, had broken something loose inside him. He had lain awake the night before, listening to Ava's soft breathing, staring at the ceiling of their small base apartment. He told himself the past did not matter, that the Navy Cross collecting dust in a shoebox did not matter, but now he was not sure. Maybe for the first time in years, he wanted to be seen again. Excuse me, Mr. Cross. The voice was gentle, familiar. He looked up. Admiral Drake stood at the far end of the hall, out of uniform this time, dressed simply in slacks and a gray sweater. Her hair tied back, the sharp edges of command softened by morning light. In her hands were 2 steaming cups of coffee. He straightened instinctively. Admiral Daniel, she said, cutting him off with a small smile. Just Amelia today. He hesitated. That might take some getting used to. She offered one of the cups. Then let us start with this. He accepted it carefully, the paper cup warm against his scarred hands. I appreciate it, ma'am, Amelia. They stood in silence for a moment, sipping coffee while the sound of the bass carried faintly from outside. Distant commands, a gull's cry, the hum of the morning drills. Finally she spoke. I owe you an apology for a lot of things. He met her eyes. You do not owe me anything. I do, she insisted softly. For not recognizing you, for calling you out in front of my men, for letting them laugh. You deserved better than that. He shook his head. Respect is not a thing people owe me, Admiral. It is something you earn every day. Then you have been earning it quietly for years. There was no flattery in her tone, only truth. It made him uncomfortable. He tried to deflect. I am just doing my job. No, she said. You have been doing far more than that. You have been teaching this base more about dignity than half the officers combined. He looked away, uncertain how to respond. From the corner of the hall, a small voice interrupted them. Daddy! Ava came running, her rain boots squeaking, holding up a drawing. Look, I made this for the Admiral. Amelia knelt to meet her at eye level. Can I see? The little girl nodded eagerly. The drawing was a swirl of bright colors. A tall woman in white next to a man in green with a little red figure between them, holding both their hands above their heads. In shaky crayon scroll, it read, Heroes do not wear the same clothes. Amelia blinked. For a moment, words failed her. Then she said softly, This might be the most beautiful thing I have ever been given. Ava grinned. Daddy says heroes can look like anyone, even janitors. Daniel chuckled, embarrassed. She listens too closely sometimes. Amelia smiled warmly at the child. Your father is right, you know, and very wise. Ava preened at the praise. Daddy is the best. I do not doubt it. Daniel crouched down beside his daughter. Go show this to Lieutenant Carter, kiddo. I think he is secretly jealous of your art skills. Ava giggled and dashed off, leaving the two adults standing in the soft echo of her laughter. Amelia exhaled. She is wonderful. She is my reason for everything, he said quietly. Their eyes met again, and for the first time, Amelia saw beyond his calm exterior the exhaustion, the years of carrying too much alone. Yet beneath it all, there was peace. The kind that did not come from victory, but from survival. She sipped her coffee, searching for the right words. You know, I used to think leadership was about control, keeping people in line, keeping emotion out of the equation, but lately, she glanced toward the door where Ava had disappeared. I am starting to realize that compassion might be the highest form of command. Daniel smiled faintly. Took me a long time to learn that lesson, too. There was a pause filled with the kind of quiet that did not demand to be broken. Then, without thinking, Amelia asked, Do you ever miss it, flying? He stared into his coffee. Every day, but the truth is, I do not miss the sky as much as I miss the purpose. You still have it, she said. He looked up, skeptical. You keep this place running. You keep these people grounded. You are more of a leader now than half the ones in uniform. He studied her face, earnest, unguarded, and for the first time he believed she meant it. Something softened between them. The air seemed warmer, the walls less sterile. Amelia glanced down at her watch reluctantly. I have to head to the docks for a briefing. But thank you, Daniel, for the coffee, for the lesson. He chuckled. I think you brought the coffee, Admiral. Maybe. But you brought the perspective. She started to walk away, then turned back. If Ava is free tomorrow, there is a family event at the officers' hall. Movies, games, that sort of thing. You are both welcome. Daniel hesitated. That is kind of your crowd, is it not? My crowd could use a bit more humility, she said with a wink. Bring her. Before he could answer, she was gone, her footsteps fading down the hall. He stood there for a long moment, holding his now empty cup. A faint smile played on his lips. When Ava returned, tugging at his sleeve, she asked, Was the Admiral nice today? Daniel looked toward the window where sunlight spilled across the polished floor. Yeah, sweetheart, she was. Then you are friends now? He nodded slowly. Maybe we are. Ava beamed, then whispered as if sharing a secret. She should come have pancakes with us sometime. Daniel chuckled. You might get your wish. As they walked down the hall hand in hand, the base around them seemed brighter somehow. The storm clouds had lifted, but something new was forming, something warmer, quieter, a friendship born not of duty or rank, but of shared scars, forgiveness, and the quiet miracle of being seen again. And though neither of them could know it yet, that single cup of coffee would mark the beginning of everything that came after, the redemption, the storm, and the moment the entire base would stand still. 5,000 words.